Ripper and let it warm up. He would bluff if he had to. Zenobia came out, flanked by a very daunting platoon of ravens. "You won't actually use that," she said in that annoying, "I know everything because I'm a cat and you know nothing because you're just a fox" voice she had. Or "I know the odds." Good, because there's a real chance you could destroy the universe. No, not the first time I use it. The odds are too low. What? No? Yeah, sure. The first time, the odds are practically nothing. They only go up if I use it a bunch more times. No, but that's not how odds work. Didn't you pay attention in class? Now surrender, or I'll use it. Just once, he said. Don't. He felt sure the odds were with him. You have to go with his gut. That's what heroes do. Fire, he said. Please? The Sky Ripper fired. With a tremendous whoosh, the Emperor's flagship went up in flames. It was awesome. And then he noticed there was a hole in the air. A blackness, like a tear in a parchment. Wind was blowing into it, widening it. It grew larger, and even larger. Crates fell upwards into it, and the world itself seemed bent, like the reflection on a curved mirror, as it poured into the ravenous hole. 1 in 128. What are the odds? Thought Reynardo, and then everything fell into the hole and was gone. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago, hadn't he? And now he was back there. Had all those years fighting the Empire been nothing but a vision into the future? A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Reynardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Reynardo. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Reynardo went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now. Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals. Or you shouldn't have. Reynardo distrusted doors that opened automatically, especially after being buried for millennia. Was this some sort of trap?
Already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Think of all the artisans he was creating employment for. Truly, he was a job creator. Missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like he was at a reunion. Over here. Hero wall, hero sword, ice wall, ice cube.
Reynardo wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Reynardo.
How did a temple to Iblis still even exist? The Transcendent Emperor had destroyed all the shrines of the lost gods after exiling them. Had it been buried in that long-ago battle? Or had Iblis foreseen his fate and hidden it from his enemy? The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders.
Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword? This couldn't be good for global warming. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Blood. It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, And Reynardo wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "What's the core?" said the stone anxiously. The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance. The stone felt a bit clingy. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky Ripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power. He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Reynardo had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Sword Food School together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself, except the biggest one, that she was the Emperor's daughter. No, kill Zenobia, whispered the stone, before it's too late.
He felt like Tarzan.
There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Ooh, what's there?
You almost never saw wild gogglers together like this. The toads had to train them not to peck each other to death. So these had to be Imperial gogglers. That meant ravens were up ahead. Building these platforms was so expensive, they'd run out of budget for guardrails.
Of power. Ooh, he didn't find those every day. The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. "You're weak," whispered the stone. "The core will kill you." "Are you afraid of it?" "No, don't be ridiculous," it chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you if someone just carry it, and if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Reynardo did not trust the rock that talked in his head. He went onwards. His sword food teacher used to say power gems were cheating. Stupid old fart. Sometimes, Reynardo really hated inanimate objects. Nice. That could be useful. Reynardo told the corpses. It was something he'd seen in a play once. As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical. "No! It's too much power! We'll rip a hole in space and time!" He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Reynardo came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. "I can't hear you," he sang out, and "Yoo-hoo!" It didn't answer. "Ha!" he said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer made its way toward the Nexus, Reynardo watched sparks fly out of the core. The Iblis stone sucked them in hungrily. You'd think the stone would want this kind of power, wouldn't it? Thought Reynardo. Well, the scientists would explain it all.
This time, Reynardo was sure he'd figured out how to use the core safely.
See? He'd trusted his gut, and it had worked out. That's what it meant to be a hero. To ignore the naysayers and the odd-makers, and do what you knew was right, and have it turn out to be the right thing. Well, he wasn't worried. Once he got to the observatory, the scientist toads could explain it. Then he could carry the war into the enemy's camp and destroy them all. Oh dear, he was getting a little bloodthirsty, wasn't he? Boom!
He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again?
Reynardo had never felt better in his life. Normally, a battle would wear him down and he would need a night's sleep. Now he felt like he could go all night and all day. He felt like people were cheering him on, and he could practically hear their applause as he slew one raven after another.
The Iblis Stone and the Skyripper Core. Two artifacts from the time of legends. Reynardo was becoming a legendary hero, wasn't he? He had enough power to save the rebellion, but he had to understand this power, so he would not misuse it. Don't look down, he told himself. Don't look down. Some people were just liable to explode if you upset them. Burnt fur. His. Reynardo had been to a dungeon once where all the chests had teeth and eyes. It had been a short visit. The toads at the observatory measured the stone with their occult devices. I fed it the core of Skyripper, explained Reynardo. No more feed blood and souls.
But the core is not an unlimited energy source,
said one toad. Another said,
there's a feedback loop, you see, which could overload the stone.
The stone doesn't actually feed on souls,
claimed a third.
but on pain of killing another sentient being. If you can truly be at peace with yourself, it would not overload.
This was all very confusing. At peace? Yes, the mountains were peaceful and quiet, but he now had the power to turn the tides. He should report to the Rebellion Council and prepare for the decisive battle.
Reynardo couldn't make sense of anything the toads said, and listening to them argue made him restless. The Iblis Stone had made him a power in his own right. The core had kicked the Iblis Stone out of his head by filling it with more power than it could eat. It was time to meet the leadership of the rebellion. It was time to go to the ruins where they had hidden their secret base.
He was ready for anything the ravens could throw at him. His sword felt ready too. It seemed to know what he wanted most. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger.
In this chest, there were woodcuts of amazingly beautiful vixens wearing no clothes at all. And something more useful.
From the mystical East could make time itself slow for you.
Almost fun. Pain of killing another sentient being? What was that dude talking about anyway? He felt no pain, only pleasure as each filthy raven fell by his sword and the stone glowed brighter and brighter. And all the while, those voices were cheering him on, like he was in the arena, winning bout after bout. Who are you looking at? Oh, right. No one. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Oh, hey, there's a couple of red spots on your feathers. Oh, wait, not yet. Said Reynardo, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. He slew and slew across the ruins and into the labyrinth that hid the secret rebel base. He was surprised not to see any defenders or even any of the council toads. When he reached the council chambers, there were still no toads, only filthy ravens. "Stop him! He's gone mad!" one raven shouted until he had hacked them all down. There was not a single toad anywhere. No doubt they'd all been taken prisoner, so it was up to him to take revenge upon the Imperial fleet. But where had they taken the council? It couldn't be good that the Empire had not only found the secret rebel base, but killed or captured everyone there, no matter. He was on a roll. He headed full speed towards the Imperial fleet. He would be the fox who took down 100 warships. He charged. The Imperial fleet was huge and deadly, but he was deadlier. The crowd was cheering him on. He could practically hear it. Reynardo, the hero of the rebellion. Or I could go that way, he thought. This jewel was more than sparkly. It had arcane power and an engraving. To Cindy.
Truth was, Reynardo really liked the sound his sword made in the air.
As he slew his way across the fleet, Reynardo thought he could hear a small voice whispering in his ear.
Look at your gauntlet, you idiot,
It said.
Oh, for heaven's sake, he thought. Can't I be alone in my own head? Look at the stone. I'm busy, told the voice. Talk later. Then it will be too late, cried the voice. Don't be so bloody thick. Piss off, he told the voice and kept up his slaying. Reynardo had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2.
This would be the perfect place for a tic-tac-toe board. There was the Emperor. Reynardo cut down his elite guard. The exalted Toad cowered fearfully. He had sought to evade death and only made death come to him faster. Reynardo savored the moment. And then, too quick, it was over. He stood over the dead Emperor.
Death to tyranny! He shouted. Go, House, go! Zenobia stepped out of the shadows. You have to stop, she said. You've killed everyone. Our ravens, your rebels. You murdered the whole rebel council. What? Oh, the ravens killed the council. Yeah, big idiot. They don't even know what the secret base is. Shouted Lapino, who was with her for some reason. Look at the stone, said Zenobia. It was black as night. Blacker But I fed it the core, said Reynardo. It was glowing. Well, who needs a core, he said, and he attacked. Zenobia conjured her best, and Lapino hopped around like a mad rabbit, but he killed them both easily. I am unstoppable, he orated at the blood-soaked walls. I alone shall be emperor. The tiny voice inside him screamed, that doesn't even sound like you, you big fanny. The stone has stolen your mind. But he ignored it. Who listens to voices in their heads anyway? Madmen, that's who.
Reynardo stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Reynardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens?